Let's get into the player ratings. Vicario up first. Sim gives him 7. I gave him a 6. Made some really important saves to keep the game down to 1-0. But I got consistently frustrated with him and his passing out the back yesterday. It just kept coming back time and time again. And if Eze wasn't offside, I mean, that would have been a horrific goalkeeping error from him to make it 2-0. Lucky for him that it was offside.
Yeah, but I don't really count that against him because it was, so it didn't count. So I actually think from set pieces, pretty good. Again, was coming for things, making sure he's getting punches, some stuff like that. As you say, made some really important saves. One notably from Adam Wharton late in the game, which was a brilliant save. And if it wasn't for Vicario, it could have been a bit worse as well. His passing out the back was bad, but again, I think it's more to do with Palace than it was to do with him. Because a lot of the time it wasn't like he was just playing out of play like terrible passes. A lot of the time he's doing what was instructed of him, playing it short, and Palace's aggressive press was meaning that a lot of the time it wasn't coming off. So I don't fully put the blame on him on that, albeit I actually thought some of his passes into Solanke were quite good actually. So I give him credit for going long a bit more when the situation needed it. So yeah, give him a 7.
Destiny Udogie up next. Sim gives him a 5. I gave him a 4. Few good bits, but a lot of bad bits in there from Udogie. I felt like he wasn't aggressive as he usually is. He did win a fair amount of duels on the day, but I just felt like we were getting done a bit on that side. His passing, I thought a number of times he was getting the ball and passing it straight into Palace players, which it was coming back the other way. Could have ended a day on the with an assist to his name, but it was nowhere near like the Destiny maybe we've seen over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, I actually thought he was one of our better players on the day, to be honest, Destiny. I thought he wasn't as bad as some of the other players. As you say, he was the one actually getting in when he was making those underlapping runs, caused a few problems for Palace, especially in that first half. I thought Ismaili Assar was kept relatively quiet compared to Eze on that side as well. But obviously the goal kind of comes down his side, although not really his fault. On the ball, especially in general play, did have some struggles. But I thought defensively he was actually not too bad compared to some of the other players. So I didn't think he had a great game. I thought he was a bit sloppy like a lot of the team, but I actually thought he was one of our better players on the day.
Kuti Romero up next. 4s all round for Kuti. Obviously, everyone's going to talk about that pass he played to Van de Ven, which it's just shocking. Whichever way you look at it, shocking to make the decision to make that pass. And I thought the execution as well wasn't great. He did make quite a number of good interceptions and a good challenges to set us on our way a couple of times, but I felt like his passing was nowhere near his best. And again, very sloppy play by Kuti.
Yeah, obviously that pass. I mean, look, if I actually look at the pass, I don't think the execution was bad. Again, I think Van de Ven should have taken it down, but you shouldn't be playing a pass like that, essentially, when you're in that situation. A lofted pass when you're being pressed in that across the face of goal. It's not a clever decision, but I actually think Van de Ven should have taken it down, and maybe the sun caught in his eyes or something, but for one reason or another, he just lets it bounce. I did think a lot of the time he was being rash and was being caught off guard. I think in general, there was definitely a period in that first half where he just kept giving the ball away, and that was very frustrating. The reason he's not lower than a 4, and I gave him a few points, is actually I thought late in the game when we were going forward and looking to press, looking to kind of force the issue a bit, he was left in about 3 or 4 one-on-one situations with Nketiah and Eze, and actually probably saved our skin a couple of times from letting it get worse. So I actually give him credit for a bit of one-on-one defending he did near the end of the game, but for a lot of the game it was sloppy and rash.
Van de Ven, Sim gives him a 4, I gave him a 3, and when you talk about one-on-one defending, I think he got a bit found out in that situation yesterday. He wasn't strong enough in the challenge for me. Van de Ven yesterday obviously should be reacting better to that pass from Romero, where he had a chance to get it away, and he let the ball run across him, and then obviously he got pressed and lost the ball. I just felt like he just didn't turn up yesterday, Mickey, unfortunately, and I thought that was one of his worst displays in the Spurs shirt.
Yeah, poor performance. Also, you could argue lucky to stay on the pitch. I think he probably was the right decision. to give him a yellow card, but he does foul Ismaila Sarr in a very dangerous situation, and maybe if Sarr is going towards goal rather than from away from goal, the card would have been different. So probably got a bit lucky in that situation. Actually, if you look at the situation as well, he isn't aware. I think it was Ismaila Sarr was running behind him, and he's kind of jogging towards the ball, and all of a sudden he notices Sarr is in full sprint. He's like, oh God, I've got to get on my bike. And by that, it's too late. And nearly cost him a red card there. I thought whenever Eze was getting on that side, Mateta as well, a few times was getting the better of him physically. Just wasn't a great day from Van de Ven. There was one good moment, I guess, in the second half. He strode forward like classic Van de Ven and played a nice ball to Werner, who nearly set up a chance. So that was good, but apart from that, yeah, it wasn't a great day. And obviously the goal, yeah, very culpable.
Pedro Porro, threes all round for Pedro, and I thought it was a really bad day at the office for Pedro. He couldn't see, his passing was absolutely shocking. Defensively, I thought he was getting eaten up alive. I mean, I can't remember too many good things in there from Pedro Porro, apart from maybe one nice ball in the latter stage of the second half. But yeah, I was getting so frustrated with Pedro. I mean, his passing just wayward every single time, and it's like you're talking about one of our best passers of the ball in Pedro Porro, and he just didn't show any of that. And yeah, I thought that was one of his worst displays, if not definitely his worst display of the season, that's for sure.
Yeah, he had a torrid time, and I actually think, again, a lot of it was tactically because, as I say, he had Mitchell to his left and he had Eze in front of him, and he had pretty much, it was a 2-on-1 every single time, and he didn't know how to deal with it. But it was really, really difficult day from there. There was also one moment where I think Eze just leaves him on the floor, like completely embarrassingly, like he'd been shot, and then Eze nearly scores from that as well. It was a very, very difficult day for Pedro Porro, whether it be on the ball or off the ball. He just couldn't really get any joy. The only joy he did do, which I'll give him credit for, is he played a beautiful ball through to Richarlison late in the game. And if Richarlison takes a better touch, he's through on goal. But unfortunately, Richarlison's touch was so bad, and it allowed Lacroix to kind of nick the ball off him. But that was a beautiful pass from Porro, and if Richarlison goes through and scores, you'd say that's one of the assists of the season, but didn't happen for him. But yeah, other than that, it was a real struggle for him, unfortunately.
Bissouma up next. Sim gives him a 5. I gave him a 6, and I did feel for Bissouma quite a bit in this game. I know he did put in a number of sloppy passes as well, but I felt like he was the only one in that midfield with the engine to keep going throughout the time he was on the pitch. And from a tactical standpoint, I felt like he was our only pivot, only defensive-minded player in there, and he was just trying to put out fires left, right and centre, and the Palace midfield were physically outnumbering him in the middle of the park consistently. So I felt like he did put in a fairly good shift in terms of trying to match up to the physical battle, but he was just outnumbered every time. Yeah.
I actually thought maybe there were points in the second half. He started to be a bit more proactive and started to play the ball forward a bit more. First half, it was a big struggle for him. I thought on the ball, they were kind of surrounding him and being very aggressive, and every time he tried to pass the ball forward, it was just being blocked, and it was coming back the other way, and it was difficult for him to deal with. I thought second half, obviously he moved into the double pivot with Sarr into a 4-4-2. I actually thought he looked a bit better when it was a 3. And once it went 4-4-2, he had even more ground to cover, and it wasn't great from him. Albeit Sarr did help him out quite a bit, and we weren't as exposed, but they were still finding joy getting in behind him. So again, wasn't a great day, and also in that second half, he was asked to be a bit more creative and just wasn't able to do it.
Yeah. Moving on to Decky, Sim gives him a 5, I gave him a 3. Definitely his worst performance of the season. He's been brilliant throughout the season so far. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case at Palace. He got a yellow card for some petulant behaviour with pushing down, I can't remember which one of their players it was. But then he could have got sent off, man. He was putting in quite a number of fouls. I think he made 4 fouls on the day, and I thought he was quite rightly taken off because I felt like he was getting really frustrated on the day and could have ended with a red if we didn't take him off. And he just didn't offer any of the good attacking moments that we've seen from him in the game. His passing was off it. He wasn't able to physically impose himself on that Palace midfield or back line, and it was just a really poor performance from him, unfortunately.
Yeah, wasn't at it, unfortunately. Dejan Kulusevski, just a really average performance. There's not much else to say. As you say, he was a bit petulant sometimes, getting involved in little things that could have given him a second yellow. I don't know what he got first yellow for. Was it kicking the ball?
Pushing someone.
Pushing. Yeah, it was getting frustrated on the day. You could tell, Decky, and wasn't really helping out Brennan on the right hand side as well. I don't remember too many times they were linking. Just a really, really poor display, unfortunately, for Decky.
James Maddison, Sim gives him a 5. I gave him a 4. I mean, I thought it was a bit better than Decky. Could have had a goal on another day, but it was a really good save from Dean Henderson. Was his the post or
There was a save.
It was a good save from Dean Henderson. So he could have clawed us back into the game at that moment in time. He was dropping deep into the midfield. He was winning his duels. So I guess from an aggressive standpoint, I thought he was okay. But yeah, still not good enough. We needed some sort of creativity in the middle of the park, and he couldn't bring that.
Yeah, I did think it was probably the wrong decision to take him off, though, just because as soon as he went off, we struggled to really have any quality on the ball and struggled to kind of keep the ball in the central area. He obviously, as you say, nearly scored, had a couple of good set piece situations as well. One of his set pieces led to, I think, Brennan hitting the post. So had a couple of moments, and yeah, he's really unlucky not to score, actually, because you look at it back, it's a brilliant save from Henderson, fingertip save where it looked like he was heading for the corner. So really unfortunate. He had one effort in the second half as well, but wasn't really troubling the keeper. It was from about 30 yards, easily dealt with by Dean Henderson on that occasion. But he was taken off on the hour. Maybe he just felt like, I don't know if Ange felt like he was tired and just we needed more legs. Clearly he felt that. But as soon as we lost Maddison and Decky, it just felt like all our creativity was gone. So, yeah, probably a mistake to take him off.
Mikey Moore up next. Sim gives him a 5. Not sure why it says I gave him a 6, because I also gave him a 5 for his game yesterday. But yeah, look, I thought when he had the opportunity to run at the Palace defence, I think he did fairly well. There was one in the first half and potentially one in the second half as well. But I felt like he was losing his individual battles in terms of his duels, and there was just not much in there for him. There was, but the time he was on the pitch, it was mainly Palace attacking down our end of the pitch. So his chances to run at the Palace defence were really limited. But I thought when he did get on the ball, he did okay.
Yeah, had a couple of moments, especially on the left-hand side. Not too much with his dribbling, but a couple of moments where he passed the ball down the line inside to Udogie, and one to Udogie, one to Maddison. It did set up a couple of chances, so that was quite good from him. Struggled really when he did go on the ball to impact the game in terms of his ability to take people on and dribble. There was one moment where he dribbled into his own half and lost the ball and nearly cost Tottenham a goal as well. I felt for him because, it's his big debut, it's his big moment, getting a first start for Tottenham in the Premier League, and it was just a really bad team performance, and unfortunately he was part of it, but yeah, it wasn't his day, unfortunately.
The thing is, when you compare Mikey Moore and Timo's performances over the past couple of weeks, obviously, I think the quality that Mikey has on the ball eclipses what Timo does. But what Timo actually does really well, which is kind of underrated, is the defensive aspect of the game. And I don't think Mikey Moore really brought that yesterday.
Yeah, that was something I didn't say it, but that is something I was worried about a bit before. Just because he's 17, you have to be very tactically aware in this day and age. You have to be willing to put in all that work. And when you're a player like of Mikey Moore and you're a special talent, but you're still very young and still got a lot of growing to do, I feel like you just need a bit of freedom and you need to be kind of protected a bit by your teammates. And unfortunately, we weren't able to do that yesterday.
Yeah, which was an unfortunate case for him with his big chance at 17 years old. And
I'm sure he'll get more, though.
Yeah, for sure. Dob Solanke, Sim gives him a 7. I gave him a 6. Probably our best player definitely our best player on the day. I felt like it was like a lone battle by him against the whole of the Palace back line at times, where he was picking up the ball in the midfield, playing good passes and just trying to go around the outside and beat the whole of the Palace team all by himself, where, we needed our wingers and our creative outlets in the middle to do that, and him to stick up there and be a threat in for the goal, where he was playing pretty much as like a midfielder for pretty much the whole game, which I don't put as a bad mark against him, because he had to drop deep to get involved in the play, because no one else was really able to do anything on the pitch. So he showed really good mentality in the game yesterday, where he was our only player that looked like they really wanted it and they really wanted to take the game to Palace.
Yeah, and even when we went 2 up top, he was kind of dropping deep as like a number 10, and he was one trying to play Richarlison from goal and actually create openings, and he was the only one actually getting any joy from his duels. A lot of the time we went direct to Solanke, and his just hold-up play and ability to turn his defender. Like, he turned Lacroix a couple of times. Unfortunately, because they got 3 centre-backs, he would turn Lacroix and then he's got another 2 to deal with. So it was still very, very difficult for him to make an impact in terms of goal scoring. And also, he'll be a bit disappointed because when he did turn his man, which he did on a number of occasions, he would pass the ball through on goal, and a lot of the time it wasn't accurate enough. But I give him a lot of credit because it was a very difficult scenario he was put in. Him up against 3 very physical players, always having to drop deep as well to find space, and always, whenever, to get any sort of joy, he have to beat his man every time. He would have to have a man to beat. He wasn't afforded any space. And I think given that scenario, he actually did fairly well and actually beat his man on more occasions than I expect him to in that scenario, and actually got quite a lot of joy. But unfortunately, he was. No one else was really on his wavelength, and no one else was really able to do what he was doing. And if they were, maybe we could have got a better result. But unfortunately, he was the only one stepping out.
Yeah, I felt like he was one of the only ones that actually kept up the physical battle and able to maybe stand up to what Palace were throwing at us. He was like literally the only one on the day. Last but not least of the starting 11, Brennan Johnson. Falls all round for Brennan. We needed a creative spark, creative outlet, and I felt like he was failing in a lot of it. He made one big chance created throughout the game, but apart from that, I think he flattered to deceive for pretty much the whole game, and I felt it was really frustrating watching Brennan yesterday, and both of them on the right-hand side, when it looks like Pedro Porro and Brennan just offered little next to nothing.
Yeah, obviously that chance he created was for Decky, which was actually a decent ball, but if you look at the chance, it was always going to be very difficult for Decky to finish that out of the near post. Obviously, Dean Henderson made a save. Brennan does hit the post in the first half. Bit unlucky, but obviously it just would have been a bit of luck. It ricocheted off him. I think it was a shot from Van der Ven.
He knew nothing about that.
It was a shot from Van der Ven. It deflected off him and it hit the inside of the post. Didn't nearly go in, though. But other than that, it was kind of a frustrating performance from Brennan because he was out wide, and a lot of occasions he was given time to get a delivery in, and every time he wasn't able to do it. He just hit the man in front of him, hit the front man, the man marking him, and he wasn't able to wriggle away from him, create any sort of separation to get across in. It was increasingly frustrating because there was a number of occasions where we had a lot of players in the box. You had Richarlison, Solanke all waiting for that delivery, and every time Johnson just wasn't able to get away from his man and get a ball in, and it led to either the crosses being blocked or possession being given away, and that was very, very frustrating from Brendan. And also, a lot of the time, we would pass the ball to him, and he would just allow Mitchell to be aggressive and win the ball away from him instead of backing into him and trying to engage in a physical battle. He just didn't seem to be up for it. So, really disappointing.
Yeah, and as Lee says in the comments, I was just about to mention it, I think he needs to deactivate that social media again and maybe start a goal-scoring streak. Let's move on to the substitutes, starting off with Richarlison. Sim gives him a 5, I gave him a 4. We moved to a 2 up top, and I found Richarlison so frustrating, man. There was that one moment, it looks like he's through on goal, and the defender just completely bodies him and wins the ball back off him. There was another moment in the back post where I don't know what even happened. I think it just hits his body in it and it goes out for a goal kick, or maybe the defender wins it. But he offered a few things in terms of physicality and pressing, but apart from that, his quality on the ball was shocking.
Yeah, he's definitely looking still rusty, but that chance was probably his big chance of the game, and terrible touch, allowing Lacroix to just step in and win the ball back easily, because if he just takes the touch in front of him instead of to the side, he's through on goal. I think any top striker would know that, but it's just such a rusty touch. It's almost as if he hadn't played football ever. Well, I mean, with that touch, but obviously he hasn't played football in a while, or consistent. He did give us a bit more of an aerial threat when he in the box, and obviously Werner was looking for him a couple of times, but unfortunately wasn't able to. There was also one more. There was a moment at the back post as well where I think a cross comes in, it falls to him at the back post, but again, whether he doesn't expect it or what, but he just fluffs it again and it goes out of play for a goal kick. Super disappointing again from Richarlison off the bench, and he's just looking rusty.
Yeah. Timo, Sim gives him a 6, I gave him a 5. I thought at least he was providing an outlet on that left-hand side, showing his speed. Not too much quality. He put in a few crosses on the day, but in terms of our wingers, he probably provided more than us than any of them did.
I think credit where credit's due. I thought he actually was decent when he came on. I thought his deliveries were actually really good, especially when he cut inside. From some very decent deliveries, and one of them nearly found Richarlison, but it fell into the hands of Henderson, but he nearly spilled it. It was quite a good cross. He put in another really good ball, which was inches away from Solanke, but the Palace defender just gets it away. I thought he was giving their Munoz a lot more trouble than any of the other wingers in terms of taking them on. But at the end of the day, wasn't able to get the assist, but wasn't for the want of trying, in my opinion.
Pat Mate Sarr, Sim gives, we both give him 6, and I felt like we needed legs in the middle of the park, and he came on, definitely provided that. Carries on his fairly good form. I thought he looked bright when he came on.
Yeah, I actually think it was all right. Definitely helped with the legs in the middle. I don't think we would have had any periods of play going forward at all if it wasn't for him, because it felt like once we moved to a 4-4-2, he had so much ground to cover, and he was the one asked to be defensively shielding, but also asked to progress the ball forward because we didn't really have any other players to do it centrally. And he was doing a fairly decent job getting the ball out wide to Porro and Johnson. It was just very difficult, though. He didn't have I felt like if maybe he had an extra man with him centrally, it would have found it easier, but he wasn't able to do. He didn't have that. Play some decent balls out wide. He offered quite good coverage in the centre as well. So I thought he did all right when he came on, actually.
And last but not least, Mr. Ange Postecoglou. Sim gives him a 4. I gave him a 3. And, when the starting lineup gets announced, everyone's so excited, aren't they? I thought it was probably the right lineup when it was announced. I was very excited to see Mikey Moore. But once you see tactically the way Crystal Palace set up and the way they were completely dominating us and kept winning the ball back high up the pitch, we needed to make some changes, and we needed to be tactically aware of what was going on that pitch. And I felt like he didn't do that up until the 65th minute. And even then, I felt like he made the wrong changes. You can't take off both attacking outlets in the middle of the park. And if you're going to take off both, at least put on a Bergvall or something, so we have a bit more, we have a bit of creativity in the middle of the park, and he didn't do that. I felt it was all right. I did feel it was the right move to take off Decky, because I felt like he was, first of all, he wasn't in the game, and second of all, I felt like he was a risk of being sent off with being on a yellow card. So he had to keep Maddison on the pitch, in my opinion, and if not, you got to bring on Bergvall. Obviously, he didn't do that, and we lost the game, and he got completely out-tacticked by Glasner.
Yeah, completely. And I thought he didn't adjust to the game well at all. I understand it was a very difficult game, and it was, as he said, it was very stop-start and it was very hard to get into your rhythm. But I thought he couldn't make any tactical adjustments within the formation he started with. Albeit I don't blame him for starting with which he did. But although before the game I was calling for Sarr to start, just because the way they set up Palace, it just meant it was going to be very difficult to contain them unless we had more legs in the middle. And I think it proved that way. I think in the second half he should have changed it to match up Palace. I think he should have just matched their formation, gone 3 at the back and gone kind of man for man, and kind of rely on our own quality. Didn't do that. And I actually think his changes negatively impacted the game rather than positively impacted the game. And I think that's a massive shame, because I don't blame him for changing it. And he did change it fairly early, hour mark, still got half an hour to go. So he was trying to be a bit proactive, albeit, you could argue could have changed it at half time. But on the hour mark is a fairly decent time, when you know how things are going. But I just felt like change it to a 4-4-2. I understand the thinking, get 2 strikers on, try and really physically go for them. But I actually think it worsened our problems we were having in the build-up, and it just meant we were basically going long every single time, and that was a big problem. And unfortunately, it was he just wasn't able to find any solutions to the game yesterday, and that really cost us.
All right, well, there you have it. That is our player ratings for the 1-0 defeat away to Crystal Palace yesterday.